Need a new butt. That's the phrase that started this journey. Toby Price read that book, I Need a New Butt, and ended up paying a price for it. But this has been something that has started you on a new life journey. Toby Price, start by telling us what happened with the book, I Need a New Butt.
I was setting up a Zoom reading session for second graders at the building where I worked, 12 classes. And the reader who was supposed to read never showed up. And we waited and waited, and we never heard from anybody. So my boss told me to go ahead and read. My office was being worked on at the time, so I had a few books available, and I grabbed one that I knew I could read or perform pretty well since, the kids had been sitting there for a while. And so I grabbed I Need a New Butt because I've had it for like 10 plus years, and I've read it with my own kids, and they really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. So I read them the book, read them the story. Afterwards, the kids would come up to me in the hallway and they told me, "Hey, Mr. Price, we really enjoyed the story. Thank you very much." I ended up in the superintendent's office about 30 minutes after I read it. I was suspended, and then 2 days later called back to the superintendent's office and terminated for reading that book. No, not a problem. I will read to you some from the back of the book, and then I'll tell you my take on it. The boy suddenly notices a big problem. His butt has a huge crack. So he sets off to find a new one. Will he choose an armor-plated butt, a rocket butt, or butt? Find out in this quirky tale featuring hilarious rhymes and delightful illustrations. Children and parents will love this book. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was written by a grandma, Dawn McMillan. She's a grandmother. She wanted to write stories for her grandkids that they would enjoy. And I think that's an awesome, reason for writing a story. And two, it's just a fun book. I mean, the kids are in on the joke. They know that he didn't break it. Okay. Everybody's got a crack about it. They said that reading this particular book was in poor professional judgment, is what it says on the paper about the termination. When we had our hearings, they had 0 parent complaints that they turned in as evidence. They didn't have any. 0 student complaints. Out of the 12 teachers, they only turned in 3 of the affidavits they made the teachers write. It seemed kind of slim. We went online. Some friends suggested a GoFundMe. We went online. The GoFundMe has done amazingly well to help us pay our bills in the transitionary time, pay the kids' medical stuff. Oh my gosh. And the attorney fees. And when that was happening, Matthew Joseph and Brian Aspinall and Daphne McLamini from X Factor and X Factor EDU and Codebreaker came to me and they asked me if I wanted to write some books, some kid books. You got fired for reading a silly book. Do you have some that you could, share with the world, make your own silly book? And I started working on a book for them and had it published not even 2 months after I was terminated. And then my second book came out in November of this past year. And I'm working on a third picture book and a nonfiction book now. I'm right here. Thank you for asking. They're called The Almost True Adventures of Tytus the Monkey. There's 2 of them. The second one is called The Almost True Adventures of Tytus the Monkey, Mayhem at Midnight. Each book features stories of things that have happened to my family and I as we kind of go out and mingle in the world. And my 2 oldest kids have autism. And so we kind of show folks what people who have, families with autism deal with when they go out in the real world, especially in the first book. They're in the grocery store and someone says something really ugly to one of the kids, and the mom handles it great. Tytus has a big heart and a tiny little brain, and he handles it his own way in the first book. Causes a bunch of chaos, but learns a good lesson before the end. In the second book, again, it features stories that have actually happened. My oldest daughter leaving the house in the middle of the night, and Tytus has to go face his fears in the neighborhood and try to save her. I wanted to write stories about families with autism, but the books weren't about autism, if that makes sense. I want it to be fun, silly, and lighthearted, but at the same time, it could open a conversation with kids and other family members about autism. Everything that is in the books has actually happened. The first time my oldest left the house in the middle of the night, she was 7. The firemen, just like in the book, the firemen were there, and luckily, through the grace of God, they were able to get us home to her that night. Whether or not Tytus was there, that remains, it's debatable. But all the things that happen in the book happened in real life in one way, shape, or form, whether it was Titus's fault or not. So, we have a lot of fun writing those. Titus had been around for a long time in our family. Anytime something would go wrong, we would just blame it on the monkey. It had to be Titus. Titus just showed up. He's a troublemaker. Titus did it. And it just kind of grew from there. And working on these books, my youngest daughter will tell you, I'm a lot different now. I think I'm happier. Working on these books, it's it's also a way for me to get out of things that have happened to us in a positive way too, because a lot of my friends who have read it, they're like, who is Titus? Titus is you, or Titus, it's like, yeah, he's a little bit of all of us. So it's helpful. And I think at the same time, I write it from the perspective of there are other families with autism who are going to read this, and I want them to know that they're not alone. This kind of stuff happens to us. And if there's folks who have no experience with autism, I want them to know this does happen to us. And every kid needs a friend like Titus.